one of the other things that I've been I have run some focus groups over the years of people that are trying to find therapists and what they feel is important. And obviously like the basic stuff of like location, office location, specialties, maybe like payment, insurance and stuff like that. Those are important things. But there's also this thing where their clients want to know who the therapist really is. they're sort of wanting to know, like, who authentically are you? And that's so, I don't know, therapists, they all sort of like, it seems like we all fall on the spectrum of like no self-disclosure at all, or just like more self-disclosure than usual. You know, and clients, it seems like they're wanting to get us to like self-disclose more than we've been trained.
This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. This is session number 44 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer, and I'm so glad you found the podcast and are here to listen to the Practice of Therapy podcast. If this is the first time for you to listen in to the podcast, welcome, and please go over and subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. If you've listened to the podcast before, glad you're back. I'm glad you keep listening in. You know, I'm so grateful to all the feedback I get from folks and the people letting me know that they hear the podcast. I'm just glad I'm able to put that out there for you and help you in your private practice journey. You know, one of the things that I learned this past week is a bit of information for that. Speaking of listening to podcasts, as I've mentioned to folks before, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and this past week I had to go to Nashville, Tennessee for a meeting. I'm on the board of the Tennessee Marriage and Family Therapy Association, and so we had a board meeting there in Nashville, and so I got to listen to a lot of neat podcasts on the way down there. It makes the drive go a lot faster. But anyway, what I was going to say is one of the things that I learned in listening to one of the podcasts is that Google is putting out a Google podcast app. You know, previously, if you were going to listen to podcasts in Google, you just have to go into Google Play and Google Music to listen to the podcast. Well, they're starting a separate application or app that you can get on Android devices, very much comparable to the Apple iTunes podcast app. So anyway, go check that out for yourself if you're an Android user. I know I'm an Apple guy I'm one of those, I guess you could say I'm a kind of a mixed breed when it comes to technology. I've got an iPhone, but I use a Windows system with my computer. Go figure. I'm sure there's a lot of you that just would be aghast to know that I go back and forth between the two, but it works for me anyway. I digress. I'm going down a rabbit hole here. So anyway, the other thing I wanted to let you know about is that, as you've heard me mention in previous episodes, I'm really focusing on getting some mastermind groups together and really focusing on trying to help people more through some coaching and consulting. And I've had several great conversations with some folks this past week, those that wanted some help with their practices and really kind of getting some feedback and some direction. You know, one of the things that you hear over and over from people that have successful private practices is that they do invest in some coaching and mentoring. And so a mastermind group is a great way to do that. And the way that I'm doing the mastermind group is that first of all, you just go over and apply. Go to practiceoftherapy.com/mastermind and just go online there and fill out the application. And what will happen next is I'll be in touch with you about us just setting a time to just have a conversation about that and to see if a mastermind group would be a good fit for you. They're not for everyone. I mean, that might not be a great fit for you, but what I'm trying to do is get some like-minded people together, people that are in similar places in their private practice journey. And so the place that we'll start is just for you and I to have a conversation, brief 20-minute consultation, just kind of brainstorming session to see where you want to go in your practice. And to do that, it doesn't obligate you in any way. You just you and I having a conversation about that group and whether or not it'd be a good fit for you. So anyway, check that out over at practiceoftherapy.com/mastermind. Today's guest is Jeff Geunther. Now, I was so excited to get Jeff on the podcast. Jeff is one of those just delightful people to talk to, and I've been following Jeff for a little while. You probably might know him from the Practice Academy if you've seen that online. And also, more recently, Jeff has started a new directory for therapists called the Therapy Den. And he's going to talk some more about that in my interview with Jeff. But one of the things about this community of private practice consultants or private practice coaches or mentors is the one thing that I have learned is that all of us are collaborative people. We all get along well with each other. And it's what's great is that there's not this heavy sense of competition between us. We all realize that there's more than enough people out there that want help. Just like it is with your private practice, there's more than enough clients out there, and it's just a matter of us making ourselves available and making ourselves known to those people. And so in today's podcast, I'm going to be talking with Jeff not only about the things that he's involved in and kind of his private practice journey, but also just some things around search engine optimization. In other words, being able to get the word out there about your practice. And also we talk some more about what will help you on your website. And so without further ado, here is Jeff Geunther. Hello, folks. Welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so happy to have with me today and really thrilled that Jeff agreed to be on the podcast. But I've got Jeff Geunther. And Jeff is, many of you might know Jeff from the Practice Academy and also one of his newer ventures, the Therapy Den directory. And we're going to hear more about that and so a lot of other cool stuff. We were just chatting here before we started recording, but welcome, Jeff. Glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so tell folks a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've landed where you've landed.
Sure, yeah. I grew up in Los Angeles. I ended up going to USC, University of Southern California, to get my graduate degree in marriage and family therapy. And once I graduated in 2005, I moved up to Portland. And so when I landed in Portland, there was a couple agency jobs that I worked at that weren't really, agency jobs can be kind of tough sometimes. So they weren't the best fit for me. So I pretty soon after landing in Portland, in 2005, I started my private practice. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have many connections because I didn't know anybody when I moved up here to Portland. So one of the thing that I thought would be a good idea when starting the private practice to get clients in was charging very little money. Yeah, and I think maybe we've all sort of been there.
Yes.
And there's like, how much am I worth kind of stuff going on that I wasn't totally aware of. So when I first started my private practice, I was only charging $25 per session.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't recommend that. It did get some people through the door, but I don't know if you've experienced this, but when the folks that came in to see me and were only paying $25, it didn't feel like they were super invested in therapy, and they were missing more sessions than I thought they would. So I sort of quickly, raised my prices just a bit until I hit $60. I was still unlicensed at the time, and in Oregon you can practice unlicensed as long as you have a supervisor. So I did that for a little while, eventually became licensed, and then my practice grew and it was going pretty well. And one of the first things that I did to sort of start creating revenue from an alternative source of income instead of just a private practice was I started renting part-time office space to therapists. So I leased out a full suite of offices. And I decorated each of the offices with therapy furniture from IKEA. And then I just started renting out part-time space, hourly space to therapists. And it was a big hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I sort of catered towards like therapists that were just starting their practice. And so I got to meet a whole bunch of people in Portland that were like just starting their private practice journey. So it made it so that I started to become somewhat known and like an authority in the community and kind of like a thought leader. I now have like 5 different office spaces around the city where I'm continuing to rent out part-time therapy space. So that was kind of like a fun additional thing that I've done. And because of that, I was able to fund other projects. And one of those projects was a local therapist directory for Portland. So if you go to portlandtherapycenter.com, you can see a local therapist directory. And it was sort of this idea to be like, okay, there's Psychology Today that we all know about, but Portland and probably many other cities across the country, like we love our local stuff.
Right.
And so I wanted to make this thing that, you know, therapists and other people in the community, like clients that are looking for therapists, I wanted them to be able to shape the website. So I was able to collect information from therapists in the community in order to create this local therapist directory. And that was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago that launched, and that turned out to be a big hit.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was really exciting. And through that, I also started an online course called the Practice Academy.
Yes.
And the Practice Academy, is it's an online course that guides therapists through how to like optimize their website, apply search engine optimization so that they can rank higher in online searches.
Right.
Yeah, because that was kind of like the. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just going to say I've been following that some, and you've got some of the greatest blog articles on that, and I think it's and so So how did you learn all that stuff? If you're like me, you learned it the hard way.
Yeah. I just sort of self-taught, which is kind of the hard way. Where I got like really interested and kind of obsessed with how to rank well in Google searches. And I just kind of like did this really deep dive into the internet. But I was always, going back into my college days, I was I was really into computers and technology, and I was really into like animation, like 3D animation. And there was this time in college where I had to choose, am I going to go into something like technology related, like maybe computer science or animation, or am I going to go ahead and try to become a therapist? And it was kind of like a 51%, 49% of me didn't really know what to do. So I just sort of went into therapy, but there's this really big part of me that was always interested in technology. So it's always kind of been like a hobby of mine.
Yes.
So it's sort of come naturally to like always research how technology works and how we can kind of like integrate it with the therapy field and how we market ourselves, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, I think a lot of people are intimidated by that, but and they probably really don't have to be. So with the stuff that you've learned about SEO, search engine optimization, and just how to optimize a website, I know we were talking before we started recording just about there's a lot of neat stuff you have learned, or really cool, I guess, research you've done about what people tend to click on and how they tend to find therapists and connect with therapists online.
Yeah. And I've like got all this like really interesting research from people going through the local therapist directory and then the new national therapist directory that just launched, Therapy Den. So if you go to therapyden.com, you can check it out. We can talk more about that. But when people go to those sites and choose which issues that they want to find therapy for, or sometimes choose like the different like treatment orientations, I get to collect all of that data. So if you want, you can talk a little bit about like the 10 issues that clients choose.
And I know I've heard you speak to this before on another podcast, but I mean, just the wording on our websites, and I think it's so easy for us to kind of slip into this clinical lingo, and
Right.
it just isn't appealing to people. So yeah, talk about what you've learned about what people tend to click on and what they look for.
Yeah, so a lot of times when people are looking for a therapist, especially like on a therapist directory, or if they're even just typing it into Google, I've collected these sort of like top 10 things that they're looking for. And the first three are probably pretty predictable. You would imagine like, okay, a lot of people are typing that into Google or like selecting that on the therapist directory. The number one issue that people are looking for therapy for is anxiety, just like plain and simple anxiety. And then the second one is relationship and marriage issues.
Yeah.
And then the third one is depression.
Mm-hmm.
And those top three issues actually take up a little bit more than 40% of all the people coming through the therapist directories. Yeah, so 40% of people are either choosing anxiety, relationship stuff, or depression.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that we, kind of have those issues or treat those issues, talk about those issues on our website. But those are pretty basic issues that probably all of us are working with,
Right. All right, have you found, I know with this, for some folks listening, this might be a little bit technical, but I know one of the things that's important with search engine optimization is just really optimizing your keywords. In other words, what you've got in your copy. And so if we've got anxiety, depression, marriage, there's going to be billions of those words on the internet.
Exactly.
Have you found some other keywords that people can use on their websites that would maybe help them with their SEO?
Yeah. So you can, if you wanted to just focus on those three keywords, instead of just saying like, I treat anxiety, you might want to say something like, I treat social anxiety in particular, or I treat anxiety when people are in like huge, big crowds, or I treat relationship issues when there's infidelity, or I specifically treat relationship and marriage issues when you're thinking about getting a divorce, or I treat depression when you're experiencing it as a teenager or in older age or something. So if you sort of like take those three things, anxiety, relationship issues, and depression, but then focus on a certain aspect of it, then that really will help when people are typing in, like depression for my teenage son, or anxiety when I'm in large groups, or anxiety because of public speaking. So when you're creating your website, you're going to want to include those sort of qualifiers for those three things. But then there's like the other top 10 issues that people are looking for. So the fourth one on the list is child or adolescent issues, which sort of makes a lot of sense. And number 5 is PTSD. And a lot of people are actually typing in PTSD and not just trauma. Like there's like enough of the population. Yeah, enough of the population is like actually knows about like PTSD, the term PTSD. It's sort of becoming popular in our language. So you can use PTSD, but I would also encourage you to like use the word trauma in your web copy and in your
Yeah. So what are the other top 10 issues?
So number 6 is LGBTQ issues. Number 7 is actually a pretty general one, but interesting. Number 7 is personal growth. People are typing that in or
that's interesting.
Yeah. And then number 8 is gender identity disorder. Number 9 is family conflict. And number 10 is loss or grief. Wow.
Yeah. So, I know one of the things that is pretty, if you think about those different issues, I think one of the things that is that really speaks to, and again, this isn't necessarily new information, but one of the things is the importance of creating a niche. Of being able to, or niche, wherever you come from.
I say niche.
Yeah, I do too. So, but creating a niche, because I think what you're talking about, Jeff, is the fact that people don't go in necessarily and say counselor. Or therapists. They're looking for help with a specific issue. And so I think that's one of the things that, I've learned is that you write your copy for your website based on those specific issues that you've identified that you can help with.
Yeah, exactly. So if you did, if you're a therapist that helps people that are in relationships, you could sort of say like, well, I help people in relationships, but my specialty or my niche is helping people that are feeling really anxious in relationships or feeling, experiencing codependency or something. And then you can get like really specific. And that's super helpful whenever you're creating web copy or marketing copy.
Right. And another thing I know and that is important is well, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Is how should people be writing their about pages? I know that's a hot topic as well.
It is. It is a hot topic, and I've thought about this a lot, and I've kind of like consulted with other folks on this. And everyone sort of, it seems to me, and you can tell me what you think, but it seems like everybody's sort of agreeing that when you write your About Me page or maybe even like any page on your website, you should be writing to your ideal client or to your niche, right? So you're going to be really writing about the struggle that they're going through and how you can understand it, and you're very empathetic and sympathetic to their issue. So that you get it, you're really empathetic, and then you start maybe like naming a few things that they might be going through so that you can sort of like create this like little digital rapport. But yeah, I think, and I've even in the new therapist directory, Therapy Den, there's a specific place on your profile that says, talk about your client. Who is your ideal client? Because clients want to like really be able to see themselves in your counseling office, and that you like treat their specific issues,
Right. Yeah. So as you developed Therapy Den, I know you want to tell people maybe a little bit about the backstory with that in terms of, I know you developed the directory for Portland, and then I'm assuming that Therapy Den kind of came out of that, and seems like, if I'm connecting the dots correctly, that your research about how people search for stuff led to you developing Therapy Den.
That's correct. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the local therapist directory was hit, but I've continued to collect feedback on that therapist directory and continued to like mine for data. And so the national therapist directory at Therapy Den, well, first of all, I understand that I'm going up against these really big therapist directories like Psychology Today and Good Therapy, and they have thousands and thousands of therapists. So I didn't want to just sort of be like, here's another national therapist directory, nothing special about it. So I wanted to make it stand out, and I wanted it to like really resonate with what I think is important, what I think other therapists think are important. So there's sort of this, Therapy Den was created with a mission to fight racism and homophobia and other forms of hate. And that mission is carried through throughout the website. So it's even, it's in there's like specific issues that a client can choose when they're looking for a therapist. And some of those issues might be, a client can choose, they can say that they're looking for a therapist that treats people who are sexual outsiders, or who are struggling with white privilege, or who are want to talk to a therapist about poly or open relationships, or a therapist who specializes in cultural and systemic oppression, or even just like a client that there's a lot of clients that are saying, hey, I want to find a therapist that specializes in highly sensitive people. So there's like different types of issues that clients can choose when they're looking for a therapist. So that makes it sort of different. And there's also, therapists can sort of like choose these categories where they can claim that they have specialized experience, so that therapists can say that they have specialized experience in body positive and health at every size, or they come from a racial justice framework, or they're sex positive or trans competent or 12-step friendly. So there's like these different categories that therapists can choose as well. To sort of like
and that was the thing that just really stood out for me. I know I went in and I filled out kind of one of the initial profiles for Therapy Den.
Great,
and it was just what struck me about it is that a lot of these issues that you speak to are just kind of under the surface for a lot of clients, and they're there. And I think knowing that there are people, therapists out there like you and I, that just really make it safe for people to talk about those things.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
One of the other things that I've been I have run some focus groups over the years of people that are trying to find therapists and what they feel is important. And obviously the basic stuff of location, office location, specialties, maybe payment, insurance and stuff like that. Those are important things. But there's also this thing where their clients want to know who the therapist really is. they're sort of wanting to know who authentically are you? And that's so, I don't know, therapists, they all sort of it seems like we all fall on the spectrum of no self-disclosure at all, or just more self-disclosure than usual. You know, and clients, it seems like they're wanting to get us to self-disclose more than we've been trained to self-disclose. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and that just really kind of hits the nail on the head. I know some of the struggles that I've had with different issues. When I share those with clients, it's like it gives me, as a therapist, more credibility.
Right.
If I'm able to say, okay, I know where you're at because I've had the same problem.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. And that's just. Yeah.
There's clients, that are going through a divorce, and they want to know that a therapist maybe has also gone through a divorce.
Correct.
Or they have it. They want to know their marital status and what issues they've gone through. And there was even clients at one point while I was running these focus groups. It was in 2016, the election and everything going on. And at one point, a client was just I need to know if my therapist voted for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. That feels like a really important thing. Yeah. So Therapy Den was sort of developed in this way to encourage therapists to be authentic. So if you want to talk about your divorce or who you voted for, or that you really believe in social justice, or you just went to the Women's March or whatever it is, you can. Or if you just want to say that I love to garden because that feels like a safer self-disclosure at this moment, then that's available for you as well.
Right. Well, that's so cool that you've taken this like you said, there's so many people out. I mean, so many directories out there, and I obviously you're going to be a little biased and want people to pick Therapy Den, but in your recent, and it's a good choice, by the way. I'll say that. But when someone's trying to figure out, whether or not to list on a directory, what would be some things that maybe they should take into consideration?
Yeah, I'm a very biased person to talk to about this. But one of the things that I look at is that I'm always thinking of return on investment. Yeah. Right. So if you're paying $30 or $20 a month or whatever it is for a therapist profile, if you get even one regular client from that, then you're making thousands and thousands of dollars, hopefully, if they're coming in every week and whatever, then that return on investment is huge. So I feel like you might as well sign up for a handful, for 3 to 5 different therapist directories, because you're probably going to get a high return on investment. So there's that. Yeah. And there's also just sort of when you're marketing yourself, you might as well try to be in as many places as you can on the internet, so that clients can keep on seeing you and be like, oh, yeah, this person looks familiar. Because usually when a client is going through, is thinking about looking for a therapist, it's a journey. They might be looking for a year, going on the internet, researching their issue, looking at all the different therapists. And if they see you popping up consistently in different places, then there's that digital rapport that they've already created with you. So it's easier for them to reach out.
Right. In fact, that very thing happened to me this past week with a new client I took. Started with, and I always ask in the first session how they found out about me, or how they come to see me, and that very thing. They said, well, your name just kept popping up when I would do searches and read some reviews, and they were good reviews. And so you just seemed like you were the guy. And so, and so I think a lot of what I've done over the years is just being able to, like you said, get my name and my practice in a lot of different locations. And, the other thing it does, and you could maybe speak a little more to this, Jeff, is it creates those backlinks when you list yourself on a directory. There's a link coming back to your website, and so it increased your search engine optimization stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And the more links you get, it sort of works like votes. Like Google looks at links like votes. So the more votes you get, the more you're going to rank high in online searches. But I will say, Psychology Today is a little sneaky about that. Have you heard about that?
No.
Yeah.
Do tell.
So there's Google also, therapists don't have to worry about this, but Google also doesn't like it when there's a website that has a lot of links pointing out, like redirecting people. So sometimes if there's like a really big therapist directory like Psychology Today, and you put your link on there in your therapist profile and it links out to your website, then Google is just like, why are there so many links linking off of this website? And they might rank you a little bit lower. So in order for Psychology Today to sort of solve that problem, is that when you have a link pointing to your website from your Psychology Today profile, it actually tells Google that they shouldn't follow that link, that you shouldn't count this link. So the link that goes to your website from your Psychology Today profile, Google doesn't see that because Psychology Today doesn't want them to see that because they don't want to be affected by all these outbound links.
Wow. Okay.
So that's something to think about. Therapy Den doesn't do that. Therapy Den will definitely give you a link. But the more links you collect, the more higher you'll move up in search ranking.
Right. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I had never thought about that technical detail.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Another like funny little and I can go through this kind of quickly. I've collected data on what types of profile photos therapists are uploading, like which ones get clicked on more than others. So I can give you like some tips on the ones that get clicked on.
That would be great. Yeah,
sure. And you can use this for your therapist profile on the directory or just on your About Me page, wherever you want to. So one of the most important things is that clients don't usually, and I'm not going to be able to figure out exactly why clients feel this way, but clients more often click on photos of therapists that are more of a close-up. So if you have like a full body shot, then they're not going to click on your photo as much as if it's just like your face and your neck and your chest or something.
Wow.
So really think about how you're cropping the photo. Clients click on photos of therapists that are outdoors more often than therapists that are indoors.
Okay.
So go outside and take a picture, maybe like get some nature, something green behind you. And that sort of leads into the next point where like natural light is really important. So when their photo like has natural sunlight coming on, that photo gets clicked on more than just like office light. Also make sure that your photo has like good contrast so that you're like sharp and clear, in the front of the photo, and then the background maybe is a little blurry or something. So it kind of makes it look like you're popping out a little bit. Your smile is important. You should smile, but don't smile too big. You have to smile just right. And what that means is that you're smiling either with closed lips or you're just showing the top row of your teeth, not all of your teeth. So that's something to think about. And then you should dress nice-ish, not too professional, but not too casual. Maybe a nice sweater or scarf or something like that. And then the last tip is if you have a dog, you should throw that dog into the photo.
Wow. Okay.
Because people with dogs, that's like the number one thing, the number one way that you can get clicked on the best is that if you have a dog in the photo.
Oh, wow. What about cats?
No, cats are horrible. Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if cats are horrible. There's not enough pictures of therapists with cats for me to like research that data.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So how did you? I'm just curious how you went about doing this research in terms of knowing what people clicked on and that sort of thing. Was it just mainly through your own directories?
Yeah, it's mainly through my directory, and it's also through just sort of like Google keyword research. And looking into, looking at Google Trends and stuff like that. But the bulk of it is from the directories. And I get I have Google Analytics hooked up to my website, so I get to see every click that people have. I can compare it to all the other different therapists that are on the site and see which ones are getting clicked more often than not.
Okay, good. Wow, Jeff, this is just fascinating stuff. So if people want to get in touch with you and want to learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can email me. Well, they can go to lots of different websites. They can go to therapyden.com, or they can go to thepracticeacademy.com. They can go to portlandtherapycenter.com. But if you wanted to email me, you can send me a message at hello@therapyden.com. You can sign up for therapyden.com. It's totally free, actually. And it's going to be free until there's enough traffic, like client referrals coming through.
Okay.
So you can sign up there. You can send me a message there. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/therapyden. Send me a message somehow. I'm pretty sure I'll get back to you. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So I'll put links in the show notes for all that. And that way people can connect with you on that. And Jeff, I'm so glad you agreed to be on the podcast, and hopefully we'll have you do it again and have more of this conversation. I'm really fascinated though with this. I think there are a lot of therapists out there. The thing that would appeal to people most about Therapy Den is just, I don't know if it's kind of if it's a too used word, but the inclusiveness that's there and the diversity. And I think that is something that is really, at least I know for me, that's been on my heart and mind a lot here lately, and just the current political climate and all of that. Just the importance of making sure people know that they're welcomed, and knowing that they're included is just, I'm just giving my personal values out there, but that's, I think, something that's important for all of us, just as human beings.
Right. Yeah. And that matches the values of Therapy Den and me personally. So I think it's really important right now.
Right. It sure is. Well, thanks again, Jeff. And I look forward to us maybe getting together again for the podcast. Take care.
Thanks, you too.
One of the things that I think about after talking with Jeff is that, in our profession as therapists and counselors, we really do have the opportunity to advocate for people, and to particularly advocate for those people that are struggling. I know there's been a lot of press lately about mental health awareness and being able to, just really speak up for those people that are struggling in their lives. And so, I would just encourage you to do that, wherever you are locally, and being able to be that advocate and that voice for people that are struggling with the issues that we deal with day in and day out. And you've heard this from me before probably, is that I just want to let you know that what you're doing matters in your work with people. And I'm grateful to Jeff and all that I learned from him through this interview. I know I'm going to be changing some pictures around on my website, and be doing some other little changes and tweaks from things that I've learned from him. And go over and check out his directory, Therapy Den. He's done a great job with that. And obviously, after hearing him, you'll know that he's done a lot of research into this, and really helping people connect with their ideal client. So again, look at the show notes, and there'll be more information about Jeff's websites. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning, consider joining a mastermind group. I'd love to have you, and it's a great opportunity to connect with other therapists and also just learn from each other and helping move the needle forward in your own practice. And also, if you haven't had a chance yet, do go over and subscribe to the Practice of Therapy podcast and wherever you might be listening to it, whether it be in Apple Podcast or iTunes. Also, Google Podcasts is now available, and so check that out over at the Google Play Store if you're an Android user, and also Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or some of the other places that we're available. And so go over and subscribe to the podcast there. So thanks again, folks, for joining me. I hope that all this information has been helpful for you. I know it's been helpful for me listening to Jeff. And again, I'm grateful to Jeff for joining me in the podcast. Take care, folks, and we'll be talking with you next week. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. If you haven't already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.